We've been hearing already from our first two speakers about peace, security and justice, how they are inherently interconnected, mutually reinforcing terms, as Zeid pointed out. Sharon was talking about how peace can be an economic engine, a driver, how the economy can be a driver for the economy, which in turn, of course, leads to greater security and justice in the same way. Now, I'm from a world of international policing. We are looking mainly at developing greater levels of security. We recognize, of course, that we can't reach highest levels of peace and justice without fixing security first, that you have to fundamentally apply the rule of law to get that right. And we also see how in our world, things that happen on the other side of the world have a fundamental impact on what we perhaps experience in Europe as well. So we have refugees currently constrained in difficult conditions in refugee camps, migrant camps by their thousandful in Greece, even as far away as Calais. And they are the direct product, as we know, of conflict and human rights abuses in other parts of the world, in the Middle East and other countries. For the security world, though, we see a different kind of interconnectedness as well, how criminality and terrorism especially has been mobilized to a higher level of threat towards us, a higher level of effectiveness through the process of globalization, the way in which we see now a fundamentally more interconnected world of terrorism, of drug trafficking groups, how now there is a world of free-flowing illegal goods and services and labor that is threatening most of our societies. We have drugs coming from different parts of the world now through a multiplication of different routes, using different, more innovative forms of transportation as well. We see the higher mobility of terrorism, terrorist groups, foreign fighters that are traveling from all parts of the world to go to fight alongside IS in Syria and Iraq. Over 100 different nationalities that are engaged in that. So mobility as a globalization factor, driving a different level of effectiveness of organized crime and terrorism. And of course technology, and you'll be hearing more about that from Mary Aking in the moment, about how the way in which cybercrime certainly has brought whole new dangers to the way in which we live our lives. You're all very familiar with that as well. And we see how the darknet in that area has transformed the business of crime, giving unlimited new opportunities to organized crime and terrorist groups. And across all of this, the emergence of a much more entrepreneurial criminal market. We see much less evidence anymore of the stereotypical mafia groups that we've seen in the Hollywood films in the past. Today, much smaller, more nimble, more agile groups working across borders, working between different sectors, deliberately mixing their legal activities with illegal activities. Over 100 different nationalities, again, active across about 4,000 organized crime groups that are operating in Europe at the moment. So what we're trying to do across the international police community, and here in Europe in particular, is develop our own platform, our own international, interconnected law enforcement community. And at Europol, we are using an innovative technology-enabled platform to share intelligence every day, now between a connected platform of over 700 different law enforcement agencies here in Europe, across the United States and in many other parts of the world, every day exchanging thousands of intelligence messages about ongoing criminal and terrorist activity. Every day starting 100 new cases against the activities of those groups. And we're using that, I think, to bear down on the fundamental nature of a globalized terrorist and criminal problem. And in doing so, helping to protect some of the most vulnerable people in our society, those that most are in need of better standards of peace and justice in particular. Those migrants, those terrible refugees that have come, over 1 million as we know last year, over 3,000 of them this year alone already died in terrible conditions crossing the Mediterranean. And they're not the result, those deaths are not the result of freak weather conditions. Those are the results, that is the result of modern organized crime, forcing them into unseaworthy vessels or other forms of transportation, putting their lives at risk to make a cheap dollar. And in an area that has grown out of all proportion to exploit this terrible refugee and migration problem that we have in Europe right now. We have counted at Europol 50,000 people smugglers that are currently active in this trade in Europe alone, working in an industry that is now worth at least $5 billion a year. Terrorism, not just the terrible atrocities that we've seen in Paris and Brussels and other attacks, and the way in which that has taken the threat beyond anything we've seen since the days of 9/11, but the way in which an increasing number of children and women are among those that are drawn to the fight in Syria and Iraq, and now being engaged in the conflict itself as well. But also a much more insidious threat, the way in which terrorism and one or two groups in particular have taken over a whole part of our online life and pumped out this terrible, ugly propaganda, those awful videos that we see, in such an industrial volume that it threatens to take over a part of our lives, seeping into the minds of some of our most vulnerable people to incite them to carry out the kind of lone actor attacks that we've seen, to incite them to come to Syria and Iraq. And that's a very important part of the work that we do at Europol, to work with the tech industry to take that activity offline as soon as possible. Child sexual exploitation networks operating online is a key part of the work that we do as well. So we're talking today about building a better tomorrow, more secure tomorrow through achieving lasting justice and peace today. It's important to do that we apply successfully the rule of law. It's important also that we send the right message to our young people, that the criminals of today, that crime doesn't pay, the criminals of today are no role models for you, that this terrible propaganda online is not that you should be following, not that you should be in any way supporting. And to do that, we have to fix the problem by taking these criminals and terrorists out of the market to make sure, therefore, we have a more secure world, and from that, better standards of peace and justice as well. Thank you.